Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to a year in the life of a trophy hunter. Now, first, we're going to define a trophy hunter. A trophy hunter is basically anybody who likes to harvest animals and collect trophies. So it really doesn't matter if you're Christy.
A wannabe.
I didn't say that, you did. Or somebody that likes to kill 160s or 180s or whatever. Everybody kind of sets their own standards. But somebody that's never killed a buck before, a trophy to them may be a spike. So what we're doing is we're going to show you what we do, what I do to come in year-round in order to prepare for the following deer season, the deer season after that, and not guarantee success necessarily, but put you a whole lot closer to guaranteed success. All right, first place we've come, what is today's date? February the 24th. So you can come over here as early as you want to after deer season, but you need to come as early as you can because all of your scrapes, rubs and all, they're still going to be available. You're going to be able to find them before everything gets covered up and before it's grown up. So that way you can see what the woods look like while you're going to be hunting. But I've got a camera right here that we hung back in September. And there's a big scrape right there that was here from the previous year. I freshened that up before deer season and put this camera up. So there's not any tracks in it right now at all. So maybe there's a deer here. I don't know. But what I'm looking at right here, there's a little pinch point. You can see this big old drop off right here. I'm just on a ridge. There's a ridge that runs back in through here. And there's a creek system that runs down the bottom of this hill. And right over the top of this hill, behind us, it parallels this creek system. This ridge parallels that over there, which is a old logging road. Now that logging road is very, very heavily traveled. During deer season, there's always at least one truck there, sometimes two or three. And coming down that logging road, there's a bunch of junk in it, trees and stuff. It hadn't been cleaned up in a long time, but there is a human trail coming down it that is almost dirt. There's a lot of people that hunt in here, but we're only probably about half of the way to the end of this logging road. And that trail just continues on down through there. Where we're at right here basically is just a random area that's in this little pinch between this creek and this logging road. And we just came in here and kind of walked this area just sort of based on how the topography sort of funneled the deer in through here and found this sign in here a year ago. Now, what this does is two things. Number one, it will allow you to figure out what the deer are doing in relation to the terrain, but it will also tell you what the deer are doing in relation to the people and to the pressure. Deer are going to live in here regardless of the people. There's going to be people just about everywhere that you hunt, whether it's a hunting club or public land, and the deer are still going to be there, but you've got to come in. The best thing to do, this is a great tip right here, come in the way that you would comfortably. If you're going to come in and scout an area, start your track at your truck. When you start walking in, walk the ridges, walk the topography the way that you would naturally, just to say, we need to go this way because we can access from this ridge or wherever the easiest possible way, because that is how everybody else is going to do it. I mean, 9 out of 10 people are going to go path of least resistance. They're going to find it on a map, find it on topography, figure out the easiest way to get to that spot. And if you will save that track on the way in there, then when you come back out, follow that track and look on both sides of that track and figure out where a deer can lay or stand and watch that entire track, because that's where they're staying, watching people come in and out. And those are the spots. If you're going down through there and it's just a big drop off on both sides, probably not going to do you a whole lot of good. Those deer are not, they may be off down in there, but they're not hanging out right there close to that road because they can't see it. But if you come to a spot where you've got a little hump that may be on the next ridge over, or maybe a ridge that parallels that you can see from there, kind of like this little spot right here. This ridge comes right up through here, kind of a high spot, and you've got this big creek, and then you've got that logging road that's just right there. I mean, it's not 50 yards over there. So if anybody's coming down that road, those bucks can come up to the edge of this, and they can stay right here in this little thicket, and they can watch or listen or smell as people come walking down this road. So like best case scenario right here, you've got the road here, the wind blowing back this direction where the deer can smell the people. But then you've got this right here beside you, you've got these big old bluff. So that wind, you've got a crosswind across this trail where the scrape is. Trail's running this ridge line. You've got this crosswind that's sucking your scent right off down in that bottom. So the deer will be walking this way, coming up here to check this, check these does from a high spot in the morning where the thermals are rising. If you've got a wind coming down through here, you've also got the bucks able to check people's scent So if you can get in here and get into one of these trees, basically right here on top of the trail, then he'll never know you're in the world until he's standing right there in front of you. Anyway, we're going to grab this camera. We're going to go to spot number 2. All right, so we're back at the house now. We pulled 4 cameras and got all the video off of it. Got everything put on the computer. And one of the cameras didn't have anything. It had 2 or 3 does on it. That was it. And it was in a spot where I had found a fresh scrape with some big fresh tracks. It was like mid-March. I was over there scouting for turkeys and actually found that spot. Wasn't ever a buck there during deer season. So he may come in there in March, but it's not deer season anyway, so I'm not worried about that spot. Now, the other 3 did have some pretty good footage. And what I've done on the first camera, I've broken it down. I've got the date and the time that each deer came through. What I've also done is I paused the very first of that video for 2 seconds on each video clip to let y'all know what you would see if you had your camera set on picture mode rather than video mode. Because when that thing takes that picture, when it triggers, that's all you're going to get to see. So pay close attention as to what happens once the video starts as compared to what you would know about that picture if it was only a image. Now, a couple of tips to help y'all if y'all are going to set y'all's camera to video mode, which in my opinion is a necessity. Number 1, you don't want it directly positioned on food. Now, if you're hunting a acorn tree, for instance, that's okay because it's a lot more temporary and you're probably going to be hunting that camera as you're checking it. So you're going to be checking that camera on that food source early. You're going to be checking it possibly weekly or daily and find out if deer are showing up so that you can hunt them immediately. Whereas the way that this is going to be during the rut, this is going to be travel routes. It's going to be trails going to food or to bedding, or you're going to have scrape lines, rub lines, that sort of thing. So your cameras are going to stay active way longer. Your battery life will last over a year. You're not going to get that many pictures, that many videos just on a regular travel route, just traveling, especially like a historical rub line is one of my favorites because it's going to show where the bucks are traveling. And you're not going to get just tons of footage there, but that's a good thing because you're just going to want to know when the bucks are coming through there and what quality of deer you've got in that area. Something else I want y'all to pay attention to as this is playing is I want y'all to see how these deer seem to group together in these certain date ranges. That's what I focus on. It's going to be, all of it's going to be date ranged focused on a specific spot. So with each camera, the cameras are a long way apart. If I've got a big buck that I'm wanting to try to target in a specific area, I may hang 3 or 4 cameras in that area and figure out where I can catch that buck during daylight. But typically what I'm going to do in a spot where I don't really plan on hunting, when I'm just doing my postseason scouting, the places I find that I've never been before, I'm going to go in there with a camera in September, hang that camera, and then check the camera in February, March. I'm going to pull them and I'm going to check them and just see what was in the area, see if I've got quality deer there, and see when that date range is when the most bucks or the most mature bucks frequented that spot. Now, if I don't have mature bucks on that camera, I'm probably never going to hunt it because normally, as from my experience, if a big buck is going to live in a spot, even if you kill him, a big buck is going to always live in that spot. It may not be every year, but it's going to be almost every single year. And the spots where you get a lot of pictures of very small deer, but never any big deer, it probably is a dangerous area. There's probably a lot of hunters in there, pressure. There's something wrong with the spot. And the smaller deer are there because they're young, they're inexperienced, and they have not learned yet that they need to move to these other areas where these more mature bucks can be found more regularly. So when you're getting a lot of pictures of a lot of little deer with no mature deer, just scratch that. Don't even worry about it because there's very, very good chance that you're not going to have a mature buck in that spot, maybe ever. Now, on the other hand, when you've got areas with mature deer, make sure that you pay attention to that date range. Sometimes, especially a really old deer, he might move through a spot one time a year. He's not going to spend just a whole lot of time out traveling. He's not going to spend a whole lot of time during daylight traveling. So where his core area is, and say summertime and on into the early part of bow season, you're going to be able to get pictures of him there a lot. He's going to be up and down eating, whatever, but he's not going to go very far. When he gets ready to travel for the rut, you're either going to get a picture of him going one way one time, or you may get a picture of him 2 or 3 times in a 2 or 3 day period, coming back and forth, trying to locate a hot doe. But typically the older deer will know where those does are in heat before the younger deer smells them once they've gone into heat. And those older deer, just from what I've seen, will show up usually earlier than a lot of the sign shows up. So make sure when you've got those cameras out, a lot of times you may have a really nice buck show up 3 or 4 or 5 days, maybe even a week before a scrape or anything else ever even shows up in the area. And that buck may move in there and leave. He knows that doe or that group of does when they go into estrus. He's been doing it for 5, 6, 7 years. So he's going to move into that area, breed, and he's going to leave. And by the time that scent is in the area, a lot of times you get those little bucks move in and they just start tearing the woods to pieces. So you've all of a sudden got all these scrapes, rubs, stuff everywhere. And what we've noticed is when you go in there, by the time you start finding that sign, especially in a really good hot spot for mature whitetails, the ground, by the time the ground gets tore up with scrapes, that buck, when you go to check your camera, he's done come and gone. And there wasn't a scrape on the ground, no sign in the woods. When you went in there to check it, it didn't look like it was active, but that deer passed through. And even if it's one day, a lot of times when you've got a camera up on a trail like that, that same few days, I mean, it's amazing at how accurate it is. Within 3 or 4 or 5 days usually, that buck or another mature buck will come through that area, go into a group of hot does or a hot doe at a specific spot. So every year you can sit there with no sign in the woods, just sit there and watch that trail for 3 or 4 or 5 days in a row and kill you a good buck just because you were in the right place at the right time. But anyway, let's play these pictures, and I'll kind of walk y'all through what's going on here. And once we get done with these that I've labeled with the time and all, I'll show y'all on the other cameras what pictures we've got on there too and kind of explain what's going on with that. All right, October the 5th. One thing I noticed about this area right here is a lot of these deer travel this area during the daylight. It's not really a super special spot or anything. There was a big scrape right there in front of the camera the year before. So I came in September, hung this camera, and it just stayed right here in this spot all season long. I never did hunt this area because honestly I had no idea when the deer were coming through. But you're going to kind of see right here behind where that deer is at, you can see that big bluff. You're going to kind of see how they're working kind of across that spot. I thought they were going to be walking the edge of that ridge. There's a pretty heavy trail right there. But I was kind of surprised how they were crossing from behind my camera, kind of daggling in front of it. So I don't really know how much I missed back behind the camera. There's probably a lot of deer traveling coming across that little ridge right there where I didn't even realize they were traveling. And that's great information. You can see right here, October the 12th, really big body deer. But you can see how you would have missed this had you just got a picture 1 minute later, video, and you can see at the first of that video where it stopped, deer's not even in the screen yet. Then he walks into the screen. Looks like probably either a really nice 2-year-old or a pretty 3-year-old. Going to be a great buck next year. October 15th, 247. You can see right there again, nothing on the picture. Now, deer never lifts his head up, so even on the video, you can't tell what it is. But as far as you know, there wasn't even a deer there before. October 17th, over here on the left, you see this buck coming into the frame, the same buck from before. And this deer is there, I mean, what's it, mid-morning? Both times, right there, mid-October, early season. I don't know, I guess he's probably bedding up there on that ridge in the thicket. October 17th, 10:47. Just in there checking everything out. Probably bedding right up there on that ridge, coming from down below at the creek. But that right there shows me, I mean, he's in there 2 or 3 times right in that same time period. So more than likely, I'm going to spend a few days in there during bow season and just hunt that spot. So October the 21st. What have we got here? I didn't even notice what that was. It's either a big doe or a spike or something. Didn't have much of a rack. Then you got a buck over here visiting this mock scrape. Pretty deer. It's not the 9-point, I don't believe. But he's just tearing up that licking branch. And starting to get ready to do a little bit of rutting, looks like. October 26th. Once again, Cannot see anything on that one's head, but it is a big-bodied deer. Now, typically in this area, you're looking at a early December, mid-December rut time. So I'm interested to see, kind of what these deer are going to do, because I've already got an area close to there that is the first week of December that I like to hunt. So I'm kind of looking for different date ranges. That way they don't overlap. The more spots you can get that are sort of far apart, the better, because a lot of times you'll end up with a little bit of a different doe group, and that estrus cycle is going to be a little bit different time, even if it's a week different, 2 week different. All right, let's see. This is late November. And see, that's a pretty good buck there. You can see how wide he is. I don't know if it's that same 9-point or not, but that deer showed up. That deer showed up fairly early during daylight to where these deer should be rutting. This deer right here is checking the scrape and the licking branch. Looks like he may be peeing in the scrape. November 24th. she don't like that camera a bit. Or she's just trying to figure out what it is. I don't know if she can still smell me on it or not. Surely not. Maybe just smell like plastic. I love watching video mode, by the way. That's another great thing about having videos instead of pictures, is you can see how these deer react to your camera. You can see how they react to the area, what direction they're coming from, all that kind of good stuff. She's just hanging out in there. She must smell the strap or smell the camera or something. It's been 2 or 3 months since I hung it by then. It's probably her again coming through, unless it's another deer. I said that trail, after watching these videos, that trail kind of comes right in front of where I put the camera. You see he's coming from that trail, coming from the other direction. Pretty little basket rack deer, maybe a 2-year-old. Right behind that tree. You can see him messing with the licking branch. You can't see him. See the branch moving. He is directly behind the tree. 27th, 10:47 a.m. These deer are starting to get a little more active. He looks like he's about to pee in the scrape too. But you're starting to kind of see this group. Yeah, here we go again, 28th, 8 in the morning. These deer are starting to get really active in this spot. Starting kind of, mid-November, when that bigger deer was in there. There's another buck doing the same thing, or maybe the same deer. Looks like we've got probably at least 3 different bucks that's come through since mid-November. It's November 29th. It's like a little doe. November 30th, 8 a.m., another deer messing with the licking branch. It is peeing in the scrape. That's a little buck. It's like a little spike, maybe. Yeah. Maybe we could do a little poop in there. November 30th. They're coming right across. With those deer coming down from behind that camera, they're just kind of crossing over the top of that ridge, and it seems like they're kind of going off the hill there. Instead of walking that ridge, they're kind of crossing across right there, and I guess it's just a perfect spot for that scrape, because it's where those does are coming up and over, which there again, with video mode, that right there in itself changes where I would have put a stand. I honestly probably would have put my stand behind where the camera is with the sun to my back and watched that trail expecting the deer to cross in front of me, but they actually would have been coming from behind me and could have caused some problems with wind and everything else. We're getting into the first week of December now, which is about the time when I would have expected the deer in this area to be rutting. But they've already been tearing up that scrape and stuff. We have not got a mature buck on camera yet, at least not an older deer. That really pretty 9-point was there. That was back during October. And unless that was the deer in mid-November, I don't think he's been back. He may have left to go somewhere to rut. Or he could have got shot too, possibly. But that other nice buck that was crossing that ridge, I think that may be that exception because we still don't have another buck here. But he may be that exception of when a more mature deer comes through first before the young deer decide to start tearing up the woods. We'll see what this, that's a little spike, or a little spike. So they're checking everything at the end of December now. Like just a doe feeding through maybe. But you can see how the dates have gotten spread back out. It's almost like that little rut period, probably about 10, 15 days right in there, got real hot, for just a second. And then it just stopped. That's a big body deer behind that other deer too by just a couple of minutes. That may be a buck following a doe. This looks like a little buck right there again using that Lincoln branch. So there's several does in here. And with a lower deer density, there is a very good possibility that they all did not get bred. So there may be a little bit of activity going on right there late January. All right, so in this situation, what I'm going to do at this spot, right there around mid-November, I don't really have anywhere else to go sit. That's kind of a new date range. I've got some places early November, about the first week, and late November in several different places. But right here, that good buck showed up, in mid-October. He seemed like he might have even been living there. Because, I hadn't had the camera up too long the first time he showed up. So he may be summering in that area. So I'm definitely going to be in there October doing some bow hunting. And then November the 17th is when that really nice buck showed up. Like I said, it could have been the same deer, I don't know. But right there, November the 17th, he showed up. And then for the next 10 days, well, really to the end of November, there was a lot of rut activity right there on that scrape. A lot of does in and out of the area. After that, it kind of petered out. Wasn't hardly anything going on in December. And then mid to late, kind of late January, I think it was the 21st, somewhere around in there, you had that doe come through that looked like maybe a buck following it. Couldn't see what was on his head, but another buck come a few days later and checked scrape. So there may be a doe going into estrus either late or she didn't get bred and came back into estrus. So that's another date range that I don't really have anything to do unless I'm at, a whole different management area. But at this one spot, that is a very late rut date. So be a cool place to go that's fairly local. If I just had a morning and thought, I'm going to go see if I can sit on a spot, that would be a great place to go while you've got some deer active in there late January. But I'm definitely going to be hunting there a week or two during bow season. Right there, it's the 17th of November when that good buck showed up. What I'll probably do, I'll probably start there about the 14th, 13th, right in there, and just hope that I catch him coming through, because he come through one time. He never did come through and check the scrape, nothing. He come across there and kept on going. So he's probably coming through either checking those does or traveling to where he knows there's does. But right there in those dates, very good chance that I'm going to be able to catch him or catch another good one coming through there those same few days this next year. So I'll probably be sitting there unless I'm sick or something really stupid happens. But anyway, let's go in and let's look at the next camera. This next camera that I'm going to put on here, one of the hunts from last year, I can't remember which one it was. I know it was early bow season because I went into a spot, was going to walk down in there blind just based on some topography I'd found. I found a bluff gap, thought, we'll go in here this evening and see if I can hunt below this bluff gap with my bow. So went in there, found some giant trees. I'm talking about huge beech trees that were rubbed, but they were old rubs from previous years, and nothing in there fresh. Was no scrapes, no fresh rubs, no fresh nothing. But I walked around in there, did a little bit of scouting, didn't find anything. Didn't even find any oak trees except for right where this cluster of rubs was at. And the trees are not dropping acorns this last year, but from what I could tell, that whole creek bottom, since it had no oaks, it looked like maybe some bucks had been there in the past, at least one big deer, because of maybe the oaks. Maybe there was acorns in there, and the deer just kind of gravitated to that area, the does, everything else, and that's just kind of where the deer ended up. So what I did, I always carry a camera in my backpack. If it's deer season, I have got a camera in my backpack loaded with fresh batteries and a fresh SD card. And I'm going to put that camera up. If I find a spot that's hot or find a place that looks like it needs a camera, I'm going to stick one on it. So what I did that day, I went in there hunting, found all these rubs, scouted, didn't find nothing else, just came back to where the old rubs were and climbed a tree. It's the best place, or go home, one of the two. So didn't see anything, but I did make a mock scrape, put a little bit of buck urine in it, and put my camera up. I just put it right along the scrape line, or the rub line, I'm sorry, where that rub line had come across the side of the hill. And this place was, it was kind of inconspicuous. The bluff gaps were down the creek from me. I was not where I wanted to be to hunt. I was where I wanted to access below the bluff gap. Didn't want to mess with the bluff gap. So I come off a different spot. Well, turns out those deer were crossing that bottom end of that. They weren't coming off where I'd come off, but they were crossing that bottom end at some point in time. So stuck a camera on it. And anyway, we're going to go through these pictures, and I'll explain to you kind of what we're looking at with these pictures. There's not a whole lot, I don't have a whole lot of footage on this camera, but really cool footage. All right, let's see. October the 31st, got a little buck that showed up. Right there behind that second tree is where I put the mock scrape. Right there, 11-4, he's standing in the mock scrape. Big, gigantic, wide buck, beautiful, beautiful 9-point. Really great deer. He's walking right along, that's the 18th of November, walking right along that trail where that rub line was at. Now keep in mind, there's zero fresh sign in here. Okay, now this is 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning on the 4th and on the 18th. That is the only 2 days that buck came through that spot. But we know he's in there. Now here we got December the 3rd. Skip ahead to December the 3rd. Ain't been a deer through there. Either that or they went around my camera, didn't get a picture. But we got the 6th. Little buck coming through here. Looks like a spike coming through that same spot. Okay, back in the background, you see this is the 6th. A deer was running. I don't know if it was getting chased or something chasing a doe. Couldn't tell what it was. It come by too fast. Then there again, coming back the other direction. Could have just been a spook deer. I don't know. But in both videos, there was not a second deer. So I'm not real sure. Here's the 7th. This is another little buck. Completely different deer. Right now we're looking at, what was that, 3 or 4 different bucks? I think that's 4 different bucks. Here's the 8th, another little buck. Could be that same little basket rack. But right there, I mean, that first week of December, there's another little pretty deer on the 10th. And now keep in mind, there's zero sign in here. Even when I went back to get my camera, there was no sign. Here's the 11th. It's just a little travel route. And most of them did not even stop and check the scrape that I made. He's in it right there. That's on the 14th. So, I mean, right along, a lot of bucks riding through here about that first, from what, the 6th to the 15th. Just a little bit later than what I would have anticipated. But now, also, there's a turkey late December. A hen walking through. And then that's a nice deer there, too. That's a different buck. That buck, that's January the 4th, which there again is in the middle of the night. So we've got ourselves a little bit of a problem with this camera. Now, giant buck, really great buck on this camera. I would love to hunt that deer. What we're going to have to do, though, is we're going to have to figure out where he lives at, where he's coming from, because obviously in this spot right here, from about the 3rd through the 15th, it was loaded with bucks, but not a whole lot of daylight pictures. That nice, looked like a 3-year-old came through on the 3rd during daylight. And then we had the big deer on the 4th of November, big deer on the 18th of November, same deer. And then that really nice deer came through, what was that, the 4th of January, but also in the middle of the night. So what we're going to have to figure out is where these bucks are bedding, where they're living. That the first really wide deer, if I were to guess, he is in there heading from A to B. He come through there on the 4th, which means he's probably living kind of close. And then when it started getting closer, about the 18th, he was traveling, probably going to look for his does. And I'm hoping that maybe he is within about a mile area of in there, and I can kind of figure out if around some thickets or somewhere where that buck is at. Because that's an old deer. That's a big, mature buck. And he is not going to do a whole lot of daylight traveling, and he's not going to do a whole lot of traveling, period, that's not necessary unless he's rutting. So I really think that he's probably using this area right here to get from A to B. And the fact that he showed up on the 4th kind of shows me that he does live close, because with it being that early in this area, typically they're not going to be out doing a lot of traveling for rut purposes quite that early. Now, I could be wrong, but I think that is what got him over into this area, was that early, him starting to want to go check some stuff. But where he came from, that's where I'm going to start. And we're going to go in there. We're going to do some more scouting here in the next few weeks and see if we can't figure out where that buck is living. What you're going to have to do with a deer like that and all these deer, I mean, we've got some good deer living in this area, but where this specific camera is, with this many nighttime pictures, it's almost the opposite of the other camera where I talked about we're getting all these daylight pictures. That's what you want. And these deer out here are somewhere during daylight. Even during the rut, they're going to show up somewhere during daylight, even if it's just one day and they're right behind a doe. But if you can figure out where that spot is, wherever he's heading, that's where he's going to be during daylight during the rut. And wherever he came from is probably going to be where he's bedding during the summer and early fall. So we're going to do a little bit of both. Got to do a lot of traveling in there and see what we can find, because, like I said, the scouting I did when I was in there hunting, I mean, I didn't go that far because I was going to hunt that evening. But where I went to, where I thought the deer would be, there was nothing. And where I went to in the opposite direction, there was nothing. So I would not expect to find these deer close by to where this camera is. Although, with as many bucks as is living in this area, it's the only spot where there's sign, but they came from somewhere. So maybe one of them places, I'm going to put a camera on that bluff gap, because that buck may be living on that bluff gap, possibly. He may just not be putting any sign in the woods. Or it may be in his bedding area, maybe a thicket, maybe there's no telling what it is. Bluff walls. There's something where he's staying, and that's where he's going to have his fresh sign. But we're going to try to find him. Okay, so let's go to the next camera. This next camera is really cool. The first camera I showed y'all, it is only probably a half mile, 3/4 mile away from where this camera is, the first camera and this camera that I'm about to show y'all. And that area right there, I've been hunting it for about 2 years and have not been able to pinpoint when or what the deer were doing. Now, I did not hang a camera on it at all last year. I did find a lot of sign in there turkey hunting and decided to do a little bit of hunting and a little bit of scouting during the season and found stuff, but it was like I was always kind of a step behind. So I saw several little bucks, never did see a shooter. So I went in there this year, hung 2 cameras in 2 different spots where I found just single scrapes is all it was. There was not hardly any sign in that entire area. And where I did find the sign, I went ahead and put up those cameras. So this camera is on the other spot in the same general area. Expected to get a whole lot of the same bucks on these 2 cameras, and was hoping that I could figure out which area the deer were using during daylight. Now, to my surprise, I don't know that I got any of the same deer on both cameras, but this next camera, really cool footage again. So let's check this one out. All right, November the 7th, 2 little bucks in here kind of sparring around. And that was actually the first deer I think I got on this camera, which is a little bit late as far as just deer movement. But there was no sign. It's just on the side of a hill. And I found this one scrape last year. So I went in there and made a mock scrape in September, put this camera up. And these bucks start showing around, kind of nosing around in here the first week, second week of November. November the 15th. Like a very nice deer moving through. Of course, it's still at night, so it's not going to do us just a whole lot of good to hunt in there yet. Something to keep in mind when you start getting these pictures. Like, let's say you got this buck right here on camera, and you decide you're going to go target him. You do not want to go in there nosing around trying to hunt this deer when all you're getting is nighttime videos of him every single day or 2 days. November 25th. See, it's still nighttime, dark pictures. That's a different buck. Still at night, though. Now, if you've got a specific date range where you are only getting nighttime videos, there is a chance that those bucks are missing the camera during daylight hours. Maybe you've got the camera down low in elevation. Maybe those bucks are traveling higher in elevation for thermals. And you're just missing them on camera, which is possible. Now, this deer right here started daylight. So when your date ranges hit those daylight videos, that right there is when it's a great time to hunt that specific spot. Now, right here, that's a very nice deer on November the 29th. He's young. He looks like a 3-year-old, but just an absolutely beautiful 3-year-old. Nearly a perfect frame on that buck. Just a nice 10-point. He absolutely hates that licking branch. I mean, he is wearing it out. Looks like he's trying to get some scent on that leaf right there. But just a gorgeous deer. And there is a chance, like I said, in this area right here. There you go. Tear it up, son. This area right here, he's probably traveling up high. Like, this camera is fairly low in elevation. It's not on a creek, but it's about 3/4 of the way down toward a creek. November the 30th, that's a different buck. So, I mean, they've been in there just ever since about the first, second week of November. They've been hitting this area pretty hard that last couple of weeks. But they're all traveling that area at night. So, there again, high elevation, rising thermals in the mornings, falling thermals in the evening. So in the mornings, on the top of that mountain up there, going to have to go in there and do some more scouting and try to figure out where these bucks may be crossing. I think that's a big tall rack deer there. Another different buck, right, that same exact time period. So those bucks are there that time. Well, here we go. Here's daylight, 11:49, almost at lunchtime. Buck tearing up that licking branch. Still basically the same time frame. We did finally get a daylight guy. Now, about halfway up that hill, there's a possibility that I might be able to shoot that spot and up at the top of that ridge. And I would be willing to bet you these bucks are using both spots. That's that big 10 again. Very nice deer. There he is, daylighting. December the 11th before he daylighted. Why he chose to do that is beyond me. That is completely out of his normal date range, but December 19th looked like a nice deer walking away. But him being there at that time during daylight may be when he decides that it's time to breed those does. Maybe that's when the hot doe is in there and he just can't stand it. That looks like an ice storm or one of the snowstorms. I bet that was one of the mornings that it snowed so hard. It's pretty cool, though. It's that light reflecting off of that, what looks like snow or sleet. January the 15th, still a little buck working that in the middle of the night. But as you can see, a lot of nighttime videos here, which there it is. There again, it is lower in elevation, so probably be better to move on up the hill. That's that tall rack buck again, also at night. Probably better to move up the hill if you're going to try to kill him in the morning, but that will be a great place to start. December the 11th, I will be sitting on the bottom end this next year. All right, so in the upcoming weeks, we're going to do some more scouting. We're going to get in there. We're going to try to figure out where some of these bucks are living, especially that one really wide deer. We're going to do some scouting in there. I'll do some videos on that, kind of show y'all how we try to dissect that whole area, probably for the next 2 miles, 3 miles around that spot, and try to figure out where that buck's at during daylight. I don't think he's living that far off. He's coming in there too early in the season to have traveled from too far away. Could be way off on that one, but I think he's somewhere close. When I say close, I'm talking about within 2 to 5 miles. I know that sounds crazy, but I have found these bucks. When these bucks get ready to go, I've seen them 5, 6 miles away, had them on the same cameras, very specific deer that I knew were the same deer on, different cameras, a long way off from what most people would think. But the way deer travel, they ain't got nowhere to be. They ain't got nothing to do, nothing, they ain't sitting here on social media or watching TV. So they know where they got to go, when they got to go there, and that's just what they do. They don't care if it's 10 miles away. So we're going to break that down. Now, in the meantime, y'all go and do some scouting postseason. You got from now until it gets so hot you can't stand it no more. But you will be able to find rubs and scrapes all the way up till midsummer, late summer. And I'm telling you, look for the historical rub lines. That right there is a definite buck trail. A lot of people dismiss rubs. They dismiss scrapes. You hear a lot of different folks that criticize the use of scrapes or rubs with deer hunting. But there's one thing that is a fact that nobody can argue against, and that is a buck made the rubs and made the scrapes. So when you find a rub or scrape, a buck made that, okay? It wasn't a turkey, it wasn't an armadillo, and it was not a doe. So the best way to find bucks is to find sign, and postseason sign shows you where the bucks moved. It does not tell you when. And all you have to do after that is find out the when. So, great to have a camera. If you ain't got cameras, you can always go in there and sit. Now, it may take a while, especially if you're not familiar with the area. If you've got any kind of history with the area, if you've killed a buck in the area before, go back and check those dates. Do that scouting in that area. Those dates are probably going to be very similar within, several miles of there. And you'll just have to sit for a few weeks. Usually it's about 10 to 14 days right in there. And as long as you've got some days in there to sit, you'll usually be able to pinpoint that activity. Now, the camera's going to give you a whole lot more specific data for what I like, that 3 or 4 day date range. Because like I said, it gets pretty specific. It's going to surprise you when you start doing some research just how specific that is. But if you've killed a big buck somewhere before, definitely need to go sit there the following year and every single year after that if you've got the time to do so. But guys, y'all go do some scouting. Go find some sign. Get you a calendar, a paper calendar, okay? I would not recommend doing this on your phone or anything electronic because you're going to forget to look at it. It's going to be too complicated. When you decide to go hunting, you're going to be trying to look through all this stuff and figure out what you need to do. But a paper calendar, you just open that sucker up on that day. It tells you where to go, what tree to get in, what deer that you're hunting, and what time you should come through there. Now, the times, I wouldn't worry too much about. Dates, really worry about. But anyway, y'all, God bless y'all. Thank y'all so much for watching. God be with y'all. We will see y'all in the next video.